Good evening. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for showing up here for another inner hour with us tonight. We appreciate it. So I have my little candle, and I invite you to just take a moment again to give yourself a little breather from the things of the day or the week or the things that you may be focusing on that may be coming in the coming week that you're excited about or worried about, or anything that would take your attention off of just being present and relaxing here in spirit tonight. So just give yourself a moment as I light my candle here and do the same thing. Alrighty. So, all right. So we're continuing this series of the nature of consciousness, which we could, it's kind of a lifetime study, as most things are that we touch on here. We just kind of want to do a few intro things so that maybe get you some information, a little inspiration, I hope. And if you're interested in following up on those things more on your own, please do. And if you have questions or comments, always free to email me as well. Going to make a small adjustment here so I can see better. Okay, there we go. So probably tonight is going to be the last one on this particular topic, unless I get a bunch of ideas or questions that people would like me to discuss next week, and then we'll do one more. Otherwise, we'll be coming up with something new, and we'll let you know what that is. I want to just touch back to last week for a moment and mention something, and then go into the new topic tonight. So we talked quite a bit about what happens to who we are, the us that we are. What happens to that after the death process, once the body dies? What part of us, if any, continues, and how does that look like, and all the various ideas around that. So I just wanted to mention something in case anybody's particularly interested in that topic. When you read about that topic or hear about it, it's mostly in spiritual groups, either faith groups or metaphysical groups of some kind, looking at the nature of soul and who we are and what happens. But several years ago, there were some medical researchers that did a lot of compiling of near-death experiences of patients and put them into two very popular books back then. They were kind of the uh, authority on that in the pop culture for a while. Dr. Raymond Moody and Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. You may have heard of them. Well, there's a researcher now a medical researcher who has done much more in-depth and much more extensive and much longer terms with much larger study groups about what people experience when they die who have then come back to life. And he has a number of books out on it. Probably his best known one is called Lucid Dying. He also has one that's the correct title. He also has one something like What Happens When We Die. I believe that's another title. But he's writing about that based on actual research and interviews with thousands and thousands of people. And they found some striking similarities that are a little bit different than what Kubler-Ross and others had found before. Not in opposition to that, but a little more specific. And I found it very interesting. So if you're interested in that at all, you can look it up. It's called Lucid Dying, or a number of his other books. His name is, I want to get that right in case you want to look it up, Sam Parnia, 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 Sam. And he has a number of things out on it. He also has some YouTube things on it and some interviews with him on. So if that's all of any interest to you, you might check that out. They've also found out that what they consider clinical death and how long after that happens, the brain can actually be revived. and brought back to life is a far, far, far longer period than they have believed up to now, which opens up some other interesting philosophical and medical questions. But anyway, not going to get into far into that. But just in case anyone was interested, I meant to bring it up last week and didn't get around to it. Pardon me. So there you are. So tonight, the aspect that I want to talk about of consciousness is not something that I've heard talk about as much as awareness, consciousness, Christ consciousness, Messiah consciousness, all those sort of things we've already kind of touched on. And that is memory. Memory is a function or an aspect of consciousness. What is memory? How does that work? And then beyond how that works, in the normal sense of I remember what happened yesterday, or I remember some things from when I was 5 years old and many things I don't remember from when I was 5 years old. How does that work? In addition to that, the aspect of what I call soul memory, which means what if I'm saying I'm saying this is true, but since I can't prove that, the hypothesis is what if we've lived before? What if who we are survives from incarnation and reincarnates at some point in some way, either forever or for a period of time or a particular purpose? What if we've had other lives? And why can't we remember them? Or can we? And do certain people remember them? So I want to talk a little bit about like sort of present life memory and how that works, and soul memory from presumably past lives. And I want to start with two stories, and then we'll kind of open things up to the group. Um, as far as the soul memory part, actually, I'm going to take a step back and start even before that. The fact that we remember something from what appears to be a past life, number one, doesn't prove there is a past life. Number two, doesn't mean we're remembering it correctly. How many things have you remembered wrong just from this lifetime? We had 6 kids, and it's funny because when we get together and talk about our now adult children, there are things from their childhood that we specifically remember, and so do they, because all of those particular people were involved in that. And we do not remember it the same way. Maybe two or three of us do, or maybe even most of us do, but there's always at least one, and sometimes more than that. They remember it very differently. Um, who it happened to, how it happened, the sequence in which it happened. Our memories are not identical. And if you've ever studied things like police witness reports or accident reports or anything with eyewitnesses, the eyewitnesses' accounts don't agree. So when you get to things like Bible study, which we, do, the fact that the four gospels don't agree is actually more evidence of their reality than of their being a collusion, because in collusions people agree, but in real life experience, witnesses don't agree. Anyway, so I have a short example I'd like to give. And then without putting her in a spot, because I did talk to her about this already, I'm going to invite Nahama to share something if she still wants to. If you're still comfortable with that, Nahama, and if you're not, for any reason at all, then that's fine. We can bypass that. But the first thing I want to mention is a friend of mine I just recently talked to, actually today. I've known him for many, many, many decades, and when my dad was alive, he met my parents, and they got along great. So this friend of mine uh, had this period of his life where he believed very strongly that he had lived during World War II. And as he began to have little like snippets, flashes of having lived back then. Not that he was trying to remember it or trying to focus on that, but just they would pop in and they'd be very real seeming. So he had a number of those over a period of I don't know, a few months, I'll say. I don't remember. But they were quite vivid, and he was convinced that he'd lived during World War II. And very specifically, he became convinced that he was an RAF pilot and that he fought in the Battle of Britain and was killed. And the British RAF at that time, in most of those battles with the Luftwaffe over the Channel, they flew an airplane called Spitfires. He did not. He flew a lesser well-known airplane called a Hawker Hurricane. You can look that up or you might know about it if you're a World War II buff. A much slower, less maneuverable fighter, much more limited capacity and speed than a Spitfire. And the Messerschmitts were a very, very fast maneuverable plane that the Luftwaffe used. So he remembers being in this air battle, and he remembers being shot down and killed in this air battle. So, okay, big deal. He has this kind of memory. Well, the interesting part of the story is my dad was a pilot in World War II, not a fighter pilot. He was a photo recon pilot. He flew the fastest plane in the United States, actually the fastest plane in the war, until the development of jets toward the end of the war. He flew something called a P-38 Lightning. And he was trained as a fighter pilot because they all had to be trained in evasive maneuvers, particularly if you're photo recon and have no weapons, you can't shoot back. So you get a lot of training in evasive maneuvers and emergency procedures and things like that. So Nick one time was talking with my dad, who did not believe in reincarnation, so far as I know. Uh, uh, and he didn't, I don't remember if he prefaced it by saying he believed that he'd lived back then or not, but he was talking to my dad and said that he wanted to know if my dad was familiar with the Hawker Hurricane. And he said, well, of course, it was an English aircraft. And my dad knew a lot about lots of aircraft. He ended up being an aeronautical engineer after the war. And so Nick said, well, here's this vision I have of being in this plane and my plane being shot up. And I had this Messerschmitt on my tail, and I was trying to do this evasive maneuver. So he described what he did with the controls of the aircraft and the rudders of the aircraft. He described what he was trying to do in terms of inverting the plane and rolling it upside down, and what he was doing in the cockpit to make that inversion and roll happen. And my dad immediately, as Nick started to describe that, said, "Oh yeah, there's a name for the maneuver. I've forgotten the name. There's a name for that aerial maneuver." And the Hurricane aircraft, unlike the Spitfire, when it would do any kind of a steep rollout or particularly steep dive, the carburetor was such that because of the type of carburetor, the fuel, because of gravity, the gravitational G-force, couldn't get it into the carburetor and the engine would stall, which is very dangerous in flight. So you had to invert the aircraft so that the fuel will continue to go into the carburetor and the carburetor would keep supplying fuel to the engine while the plane was in the maneuver. And if you didn't invert in time, you lost power and you stalled out. So my dad said, "Oh yeah, and here's why you had to do it that way," which Nick didn't know. And here's what the name of the maneuver was. And that was an evasive maneuver if somebody was on your tail, all of which was exactly what he was remembering. And so he said, "Well, tell me what you had to do with the controls exactly to make that maneuver happen." And my dad described it. And it's exactly what Nick would remember. So that's pretty remarkable because he was not a pilot, had not studied flight, didn't know about aircraft controls or evasive maneuvers or that aircraft having the carburetor. I didn't know any of that stuff, just had the memory. And it all was exactly spot on. So for people who don't believe in soul memory or reincarnation, what do you make of that? Um, anyway, I thought that was an interesting story, and it just happened today. We reconnected, and we happened to recount that story. So I thought, oh, that ties in with tonight. So I'm going to mention it. Um, Another thing that ties in with that, if Nahama would be willing to share it with us, is if you would tell the story about what happened when you were visiting Auschwitz, that would be lovely.
Okay, if you're ready for me.
Yep, all set.
Yeah, I went on what's called the Bearing Witness Retreat to Auschwitz on more than one occasion, but the first time I went, I met a Polish man named Przemko. and we were doing a volunteer um, ritual that they were doing around one of the guard towers one morning earlier than when we usually begin. And afterwards, he stopped me. We had talked before. He stopped me and he said, and he had a very heavy Polish accent. And we're at Auschwitz, where you can see we're walking down the area where you can see leads to where the trains would come in. If you have ever seen those pictures of where the trains entered and the people disembarked and were sent right or left. And Przemko said to me, either we shared the same life or we share the same light. And I don't know to this day which he said, but we were walking back. Normally, we'd go to the selection site where we were near, which was down from the guard tower, in the morning and meditate and read names. But because it was going to be drizzling that morning, we went instead off to into one of the compounds and into a barrack. And so we were walking there, and we'd have to go through a fence to get to the barrack. So we were walking, and I felt this amazing experience of two peasants walking side by side from that time period. And I didn't say a word out loud. We had been talking about not a whole lot, but just every once in a while about something else pertaining to being there or our lives. And I thought, there's something missing. They have to be holding hands. And he reached out and he took my hand, and I never said that out loud. It was only a thought. And the couple that were superimposed upon us in my mind, I was seeing them, were walking hand in hand. And then we turned to the left to go towards where we were going to go through the gate. And just before we got to the gate, I thought, okay, back to the present. It's time to let go. And again, just a thought. And he let go of my hand, and we went on. And that was the last of that experience. But it felt very much like two souls were getting an opportunity to say goodbye through us. It was very, very profound for me. And yeah, should I tell the other experience?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Also be in Krakow, there's an area called Kazimierz, and I was in Kazimierz, and we were in a Jewish synagogue, and somebody had told me, if you go up there, tell them you want to go to the women's section. And I said, well, okay. So I said that. And at first the guide wasn't going to, and then saw how many women we were and said, okay. And so they let us up in the women's section. And it's this big, long kind of U-shaped with the front of the synagogue. And I started to sit right at the back and just wait there. And I went, no, this doesn't feel right. And I turned around and I walked all the way into the second to the last chair. And I'm almost looking behind where the rabbi would have stood, almost behind that.
So not a good place to see from, right?
Right. It wouldn't be where I'd normally choose to sit. And I had the whole synagogue, the women's section. And I sat down and I went, I'm home. And it was just very profound. So those were my two experiences at that trip. And I just hold them as part of a gift to me from something bigger.
Yeah, thank you, Nahama. Appreciate you sharing both of those. Okay, we got a couple hands up. Liz, I saw you first, so let's do you, and then we'll do James.
Hi, Stephen.
Hello.
I think you maybe have heard me say this story before. I worked as a professional indoor landscaper for a number of years, and that sounds fancy. And what it is if you water plants in hospitals and restaurants and that kind of, but it's called indoor landscaping. Anyway, so I was at live in Lima, Ohio. So I was at a medical building connected to a hospital. And when you walked in, I had a beautiful open area. There was this kind of a circle in the middle and lots of windows, atrium, and it just beautiful, and lots of plants. So what I normally would do is these planters are kind of like 8 feet long, 3 or 4 feet wide, and they have a bunch of plants in them. They're up high, and I would water them from both sides, water the plants from both sides. Well, this time I went in there was a bunch of crap in my way. I was not pleased, and somebody had moved items, and leaning against the inside of the circle of planters were these cutouts, these wooden cutouts that were painted red of women and some children. And what that represented was Domestic Violence Month, and these women had died.
Mm.
And I had their story written on a piece of paper on the wooden cutout. And I walked in and I started to read the stories, and I was alone. And I just started to weep and weep and weep. And after a while, I had a sense of the person that was the spirit that was connected, the soul that was connected to the cutout, to the name on the cutout. And I heard, "You mean I don't have to stay here with this cutout?" I'm saying cutout. "I don't have to stay here with this?" I said, "Oh, no. You can go. It's okay. You can go. You don't have to stay here with this." At the end of this experience, it was 15 of these things. And I had just wept so much, and it was really weird. Nobody came in that whole time, or if they did, they weren't paying any attention to me. I'm not in that place right now. It was profound. Maybe I got to be of service.
Yeah.
It seemed like several of the souls were saying, "Wait, I don't have to stay here." And I was like, "No, it's okay. You can go. You can go on. Look for the light." I didn't know what to say. Look for the light. And it was powerful, and that happened. Yeah.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Liz, for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. James, go ahead, buddy.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Unfortunately, I've never had any like past life experiences or anything that seemed odd. With a couple, despite me trying very hard. Just about every night I think, I try to think before I go to sleep to try to trick my brain into doing it. Although there is couple things. When I went to my aunt's property in Michigan in 2023 for the first time, it really felt like that was where I was supposed to be. And I don't know, every time I come back there, it feels almost as much as home as my home now in San Antonio. And I've lived here for 13 years. It's just an odd feeling I get. Now, I did have something when I was 18 happen. My father went to somebody and asked about our karmic relation.
Right.
And the guy said that well, the most cogent one would be back in the Crusades, you guys were brothers, and you went through North Africa to get to the Crusades, and I died, and then my dad who was my brother, was real upset about it, and fought this whole time and everything. So I thought I got him, because it's like, who goes through North Africa to the Crusades?
Right.
And so fortunately, that was my first semester at Indiana Purdue Fort Wayne. So, and I was taking Western Civ. So from Dr. Blumenshine, you might know it.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
And sure enough, I asked him, I said, have you ever heard of any Crusaders going through North Africa? And I was expecting him to say, "No, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." He said,
Right.
"Well, it was pretty rare, but it did happen." So I was like, okay, fine. And there was no way this guy, I don't know a lot about him, but he that was not something you would know in 1993. You might know it now because of the internet, but
Right.
it was the oddest thing I ever saw. And it's like, okay, checkmate, you got me.
Wow.
So, you just never know what's out there. You can't really close yourself off to things like that.
Right, for sure.
That would be my point.
That's a good point, and interest. I didn't know that part of the story, James. Your dad had never told me that, and you never had either, that I recall. So
Yeah, yeah. No, that's one of my common ones, but I keep it to myself. But no, I thought it was a good one to share
It
today.
is a good one to share. Yeah. Yeah. Your dad and I, as you probably know, talked a lot about past life stuff in a certain time period when we were together. But yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah,
good.
no, I wish I could have more insight into it.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Usually, one little tidbit from my experience, which may be not applicable, but there was a time in my life that I was very, very, very interested in kind of learning about some of my own past lives, and and really um, trying hard to have an experience of remembering that um, always was counterproductive for me. I mean, just always, every time. And the times that I did have dreams or meditations or memories of that, I, I I had created a kind of an energetic atmosphere around me of being interested in it, reading about that time period, um, just sort of asking if there's anything that'd be useful for me to know now. I'm open to receive it, as opposed to really trying to make something come forward. It was almost sort of like the tension of trying to make it happen stopped it from happening. So, um,
Yeah, and I'm aware that I try not to force it, but maybe I am, and who knows? I don't remember much of my dreams anymore, so maybe that's part of it too.
yeah, well, yeah, definitely could be,
Yeah.
and the who knows, like tomorrow something could change. Like you just said, you have to stay open to those kind of things.
Yeah.
You don't know. So,
Or maybe I'm not supposed to know.
yeah.
You know?
Well, I have seen people get really who do have experiences, which I assume are legitimate ones for them, and get really, really kind of obsessed with it and caught up in it to what I think is detrimental to their present life.
Yeah.
So,
No, I
maybe.
have enough obsessions in my life. I'm okay.
Okay. All right. Anyway, thank you for sharing, James. Liz, I'll get back to you. I'm going to go next to Shuli, Nahama, and then back to Liz again.
Mm. It's me this time, Uncle Stephen.
Yeah, that's why I said you first. I thought it was.
You guessed correctly this time. Good boy. Um, oh, before I go, I don't think Mommy gave Ani her weather update
I don't think.
earlier. So, Auntie, your weather update for Tallahassee, you'll be happy. We have lows 34 and a wind chill now. Before it was 20, and now it's of 17. And it's supposed to be in the 27, I think, Monday or Tuesday night. So for the next, come visit Wednesday or Thursday is your temperature.
I already heard from Lisa whining today about how cold it was in the
Yeah.
summer.
Yes, I'm
Enjoying it.
excited about it.
Well,
They
I'm
need to decide what it's going to be.
I'm enjoying a nice fire, and I can look out and see the snow a little bit in the dark still. So I'm happy.
I I'd like to interrupt just for a minute to ask for clarification. At one point, I remember you saying, once we speak up, that sometimes you like it when we leave on our video so that you don't feel like you're just, that you're alone there. And so I wondered, because most people turn theirs off and we've been leaving ours on, and I thought maybe we should turn it off. What would you
I
prefer,
I
Stephen?
love it when people have their videos on. I don't
Okay.
love it when people leave their mics open if they're not actually actively talking because you get a lot of background noise. But the videos, I would love it. Yeah, I love to see
Okay.
things. So
We'll put it
anybody,
on.
you're all invited to turn on your cameras. We would love to see your lovely faces. So
Okay.
thank you. Thanks for bringing that up. I kind of assume people, know that I like that, but I haven't said it for a while. So thank you very much. Back
Yeah,
to you,
sure.
Shirley.
Okay, so this isn't a um an actual, oh right, sorry. And Steven gets a finger pointing because he didn't let me know there was snow.
Oh, I
Which
did it.
I'm
Oh,
watching
what was I thinking?
it. Ha. No, not you, Lance.
Oh,
Sorry.
Lance. Well, I should have let you know too, but I didn't. Okay, I'm going to blame it all on Lance.
Usually it's you.
Lance and I were at a meeting this afternoon, and it was his fault. I got distracted with what he was doing. And
Ah, Though you always know me as strong, so that's going to be a usual. Okay. Okay. Anyways, besides the poke, I haven't had um any of the experiences that people have been saying, but I have had sort of like one deja vu of a
Mm.
place that I've been there before.
Mhm.
Like, you know, EC, Alat Chaim. I was there when I was 2 years old. I have no memory of it because I was a 2 year old,
Right.
except from pictures. But my first retreat when I was 14, I clearly, you know, right in the big main room where we always meditate, the
Yeah.
main room
Yeah.
with the, you know, big domed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I walked in there and I had complete deja vu,
Wow.
like I'd been there before.
Wow.
And I have no memory from when I was a 2 year old,
Hmm.
except for pictures. That's the only way. That
Just
was
2 years.
just 2 years. Well, literally two.
Wow.
I turned two at that
Retreat.
yeah, that
Oh, I didn't
that
realize. I knew you were there, but I didn't realize you turned to at the retreat.
yeah. And then the other thing is we have gone to funerals, like literally at the funeral, at you know, at the gravesite. And one I clearly remember me and mom had gone to. Actually, they're stationed next to mommy and daddy. Well, they're next
Their gravesite.
their gravesite. They're next to each other. And you know, the sad part is when one of the spouses is the healthier the spouse and they go first.
Yeah.
That's the sad part. And that's what happened with this couple.
Hmm.
He went before she did, and she was a lot worse. And me and mom are standing there and we're looking at each other going, we can feel his presence. He's here.
Hmm.
He hasn't left yet, so to speak. His spirits was still
Hmm.
resonating in that area. Like his presence hadn't left, like he was waiting for her.
Hmm.
Or, you know, just waiting around. But we could clearly feel his
Yeah.
presence. And we both looked at each other going, yeah, I feel it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've had moments of that, but not,
Yeah.
it's, you know,
Yeah.
amazing that.
Yeah. That's good. I think it was Ted last week or the week before, but brought up a thing about that spirits who don't leave after they're gone, you know, linger around, or ghosts or various things. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm familiar with those experiences too. Thanks for sharing that.
No problem.
Let's see, back to, and thank you, a couple of you folks who turned on the cameras. That's nice. Good to see you. Liz, go ahead.
Hey, Stephen. Yes, and I was the one who forgot to turn off my audio and was busy coughing into the microphone without realizing it. I heard a little beep on my device and I'm like, oh, they're turning me off. Okay, okay. They're turning off
I
my audio.
confess, I did. Yes,
Oopsie. I just wanted to share that it was interesting as I was sharing. I used to call them the red people, the red wooden cutouts of these victims of domestic violence. When I've shared about this in the past, or at least I have lots of conversations in my head. I spend a lot of time around my mother or no one. So I talk to myself quite a bit.
Mm.
There are lots of conversations I have. Anyway, and I just recall as I saw those, I realized that day I was working around those red cutouts of these victims of domestic violence. I treated it as sacred as I was entering that area.
Sure.
And I also realized as I was about to talk about it today, I kept getting cut off. I kept feeling cut off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was because I hadn't aligned myself, just me today. I was more in that place of, oh, my ego was more like, oh, look what I did. I was getting real close to that. Yeah, real close to that. And I'm like, oh, and I kept getting shut down. And I'm like, okay. I just wanted to, we all share here. And so it's very, very easy for me to slip into my ego. Oh my goodness. So I just wanted to share that, that was happening for me. And I was, yeah. So, as I stepped back into that moment, it was just so sacred. It was so sacred and went on for like an hour. It was so long.
Mm.
And I was just exhausted at the end. There were so many tears. Yeah, so I was very blessed to have that experience. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Liz.
You're welcome.
Yeah, none of the rest of us can relate to that at all about being our egos just being easy to get involved in. It's just a foreign experience to everybody else. But thanks for
I,
letting
I,
us
I
know.
thought I thought it would be. I just
Yeah.
thought I'd be very vulnerable and share I'm the only one. So
Thanks, Liz. So anyway, um, well, one thing I did want to say, um, and then again, anybody, anytime, just get my attention with the hand or whatever. But one thing I wanted to say in terms of memory is that um, there's in terms of how things function, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of a thing called the Akashic Records or not, but there's a thing that's talked about, that's a Sanskrit term. There are other terms in different cultures. But the idea is that everything that has ever lived has left an imprint, so to speak, on the fabric of creation or fabric of the universe. And that certain people have more sensitivity and awareness than others in that particular region, and they can kind of they call it reading the Akashic records. It's really more accurately um, picking up impressions from the impressions that have been left. Um, and the when we have a life experience, whatever we experience impresses upon this universal fabric or substance, and it leaves an actual impression. So people not like a depression impression like in a couch cushion, although that's a good analogy in a way, but not so much that as an energetic impression of what was experienced there. And so you can go to certain places. Um, for example, if you go to a holy site, if you go to Lourdes, France, or you go to Stonehenge, or you go to some places like that, there's been so much of a certain kind of energy that happened there for so long and so intensely that when you go there, if you're kind of even remotely psychically and or spiritually sensitive, you will sense an energy very different there. The energy at Stonehenge is very, very different than the energy just a couple miles away from Stonehenge, or even a few hundred yards away from Stonehenge, um, and many other places as well. So you kind of feel it. Or conversely, let's say that, not that any of you would ever go to a place like this, but let's say that there's a place in your town that's like a really sleazy bar, that's dark and dirty, and people there are really depressed and looking for hookups or looking for drugs or looking just to get drunk and forget their problems or whatever. But it's a kind of a really dive place. And you walk in there, if you didn't know that, if you'd walk in there because you needed to use a phone, you have a flat tire or whatever, you're going to immediately feel that energy. It's not just a visual thing. You're going to feel even if you go in there after hours for some reason, you're going to feel the residual energy there. That's kind of how memory and Akasha work, is there's this residual impression from the energy quality of experience that took place there. So we can sense these holy places and these dark places and these joyful places and these sad places. Um, it's just part of how that is. So this impression um, of soul memory, for example, leaves this impression. And even in our earlier years, like our early childhood years, there are impressions that we have of what happened energetically. But because it's primarily an energetic impression, and not like a physically recorded movie. When we tune into that, if I'm remembering something from 30 years ago and Ani's remembering the same incident from 30 years ago, and one of our children who is there is remembering that same thing from 30 years ago, um, we all will do that by tapping into that energy file, if you will. These are kind of weird words, but we don't have a lot of good words to describe this in English. And what we're going to basically pick up on is energetic of it. The particulars of exactly what happened in the three-dimensional world will be not so clear. And we will tend to interpret those with our mind as to how we think they happened, or we might like to remember they happened. But it may not be accurate. But the initial energetic thing is what we're going to pick up on. Then we're going to kind of interpret that. And so we're all going to interpret those lived moments together when we look back on them in memory. We're going to remember the moment, but we're going to interpret it slightly differently, partly because of our different perspectives, but partly because we're not actually seeing what happened. We're responding to an energy frequency of what's deposited there, and then we're filtering that through our mindset and our brain and seeing it in familiar ways that we like to remember it happened, but they might not be at a physical level accurate. And psychologists can tell you that it's actually quite, or military psyops people for that matter, it's really not very difficult to implant false memories in people. It's quite an easy thing to do psychologically, and or for that matter, false desires in people. But that's another topic. So memories are wonderful things, and in terms of detail, they're not as reliable as we'd like to think they are. But and one of the reasons that we don't remember more than we do from past lives is it would be overwhelming. I mean, think about what you have to deal with in this lifetime. Just think about all the good things and bad things that have happened to you and the stuff that occupies your consciousness every day right now, just right now, of all this stuff that you haven't resolved from your past in this life, of things that have hurt you that you haven't gotten over yet, of things that you hope for that you haven't achieved yet, of things that you feel you failed, of things that you're happy about. All this stuff that's just in this one little life is so much. And sometimes that feels overwhelming. If you could remember past lives, especially multiple ones, it would be just really overwhelming. So it's kind of a grace that we don't remember a lot of that. But if there's something you need to know from your past in this life, or there's something you need to know from another life, and you really need to know it for now to be of service or to help yourself heal, there'll be a mechanism by which that's revealed. I'm really convinced of that. So what we need to know comes forward when we need to know it. Ani, go ahead.
Okay, in illustration of what you were talking about,
Mhm.
About the interpretation versus the energy of it, things that I thought of is at one time we were sitting around when I think at least 4 of the 6 were still at home. And we had one of these little handheld battery operated fans, personal fan. And our memory, Stephen's and my memory, is of one thing that happened. And although the energy of it was communicated to everybody when we talked about it years later, Stephen and I remember Sean, the middle child,
Yes.
taking the fan and blowing it on Lisa, and she had really long hair, and it tangled her hair up.
It accidentally caught in it and just yeah.
And we spent lots and lots and lots of time unwrapping that, all 4 of us. And the thing is, we were all laughing. It was funny. And she was laughing, we were laughing. We took a bunch of time and got her ringlet hair out from under this fan. And then Sarah, the middle daughter, walked in.
Mhm.
So they're the 2 youngest, Lisa and Justin, 2 middles, Sarah and Sean. And then Sarah walked in and said, "What's so funny?" And Sean said, "Oh, I did blah, blah, blah," said this and tangled her hair up. And she said, "How did you do that?" And he held it up and did it again. And we were
Without meaning to.
no, not meaning to. We
Right.
were all laughing, including Lisa, who had her hair tangled up in there, just in tears. We were laughing so hard. When we talked about that years later with the children as adults, they all remembered Sarah as the one having her hair. The kids remembered Sarah having her hair caught in it and Lisa walking in.
Mhm.
And they all would swear that's the way it would happen.
Mhm. Yeah.
But they all remembered how hard we were laughing. So
Mhm.
the energy of it, that it was funny
Mhm.
and silly, we all
Mhm.
remembered that. That was the energy we tapped into. The details, for some reason, and we don't know why.
And everybody remembers the painstaking, meticulous trying to get her
Oh,
hair
gosh, yeah.
untangled from
Oh,
that
yeah.
axle without tearing her hair out. Everybody
And
remembers.
then immediately getting it right caught up.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And the other thing that we remember is the first time we met Lisa and Larry was at Unity.
All right.
And Larry and I remember that Stephen did not speak that day,
We were just attending.
and Stephen and I were attending, and Lisa and Larry sang. That's what Larry and I remember.
Mhm.
Stephen and Lisa remember that Stephen was speaking that day, and Lisa and Larry performed.
Right. Right. But of
So
course, Lisa and I are right.
that is incorrect.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great example because the energy of it and the back to the Lisa and Larry Unity story, Annie, the connection that the four of us felt at that moment. We all remember that really, really well. But whether I was this guest speaker that day or whether I wasn't, we were split on that.
I literally remember sitting beside you during that service,
Hmm.
making conversation, connecting when they with them performing, and yes, we all four remembered the connection,
Hmm.
but Larry and I remember the details very differently.
Hmm. Yeah, true. Thank you, Annie. That's a great example. Oh, James, just saw your hand go up.
Sorry, I already spoke once, but I just wanted to say it. What Annie's talking about is called the Mandela effect,
Yes. Yeah.
where people remember different things. And the funniest part about it is I've been uh, when I paint my miniatures, I listen to YouTube, and so what I've been watching these scientific things, and there's a huge debate right now in astrophysics and quantum mechanics and all this other stuff as to these things. Like right now, something is leaking, another reality is leaking into our reality. So there's theories of that, and there's other theories that we're stuck in a black hole or
Uh-huh.
a white hole.
Uh-huh.
So either we're in a black hole and everything's been sucked in, or we're in a white hole and we're all going to be sucked out.
Hmm.
And it's just fascinating, all these things, but and no one can figure it out. There's all this odd evidence because the universe, instead of the Big Bang being completely uniform, is lumpy.
Yep.
And so no one can figure this out. But it's starting to look like we're stuck in some kind of singularity of all things. But it just reminded me of that. It's just, yeah, because so you guys have two different types of memories, two different remembrances of these events. Both of them might be true.
Hmm.
If if alternate reality is leaking in, both of you might be right.
Hmm.
That actually
You might be wrong. Who
resonated.
knows?
I,
That
I, bu-
actually resonated. As soon as you said alternate reality leaking in, I'm thinking that's what's going on lately.
Yeah,
Yes, I believe it.
I
yeah.
was
That's the
I was
latest.
sure I was Schrodinger's cat. I was both speaking and not speaking.
Exactly.
Schrodinger's minister.
So yeah, it's just there's so much we know, but so much we don't know, and so much we don't know what we don't know.
Oh, amen to that. Yes. Thank you, Jay. You now are spark and he's going to be upset with you because you're now rekindling my interest in catching up on string theory and quantum loop and and that sort of stuff, which she just like glazes over. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, if you understand it, you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
There's three people on the planet who understand it, and they don't understand it. I'll send you the YouTube links. Don't worry
Oh,
about it.
thank you. Okay, thank you. Who just came up? Nahama and Shuli again.
Not me this time.
It's me again. We were talking also this idea of remembering past lives and things like that, talking about that sort of thing. And my entire life, I have dreaded something. Something terrible was going to happen. And it's not like my life has been easy.
Mhm.
I've had plenty of challenges,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
that involve all kinds of things and extreme sadnesses and abusive people in my life and things like that. It's not been easy, but something I dreaded. And after I had that first surgery, you know, I had the two surgeries a year apart or 13 months apart. After that first surgery, that went away.
Mhm.
And something I know, whatever is going on in my life right now, because of what's going on from the surgeries, there's something for me to learn. And I don't know, you know, how did I know that?
Right.
How did that get planted? Is that a past, you know, is that a very soul level memory? I
Right.
don't know.
Right. Right. That just reminded me of another kind of related facet of all this is precognition, where you know something before it happens. And is that a soul memory? Is it a karmic thing you're aware of that's going to be unfolding but hasn't unfolded yet? Is it tapping into, you know, what is that? Um, yeah, that's it's a fascinating field. And like James said, you know, there's just so much we don't know.
Well,
Yeah,
and I
go ahead.
feel like this is an opportunity for me to learn and grow from
Mhm.
whatever these experiences
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
and really deepen my relationship with the oneness.
Yeah, yeah. And the fear component, that would be another interesting thing to not that anybody wants to do a series on fear, but it's such a prominent part of our lives in so many ways. And the presence of it or the absence of it so dramatically changes how we experience a reality. You know, whether if we're experiencing it caught in fear or we're experiencing the very same thing not caught in fear. It's a very different thing. And and when somebody's had a lifelong fear and then suddenly they don't, well, for whatever reason, either they're now living the experience so they don't have to worry about it coming, or something just lets go in them and they release it, however it works, that difference between the presence of that fear and the absence of it is really amazing. Really amazing. I've known more than one person that was not just uncomfortable flying, but terrified flying. And I've known more than one of them in my life. And something happened, whatever it was that happened, then they weren't. Then they just weren't. It was just, they weren't. Um, and it was just such a dramatic difference, you know. Addicts will talk to me sometimes about recovered alcoholics or addicts will talk about how the life they're living now, free of that addiction, is not even a life they could have imagined while they were in it. So it's all those aspects of consciousness are fascinating to me. But I'm going to quit talking here. So anybody else, something you'd like to share? All right. So one last thing I want to mention on memory that I'd hope to get in tonight. Oh, Eunice, go ahead. Unless you're doing an incantation, but if you're getting my attention, go ahead. You're muted, dear. You're muted. Can't hear you. There you go.
I am now manifesting the Theodore,
Okay.
who is to my left,
Hello,
or
Theodore.
is he, or is
Or
he?
is he?
Ah, Eunice. She's such a joker, isn't she? Anyhow, I got two things. One is that as far as memory goes, Eunice and I will remember different things. In other words, she'll remember something and explain it to me. And I have no recollection of it, even though we may have shared it. So my my thinking is that if it's important to you, that something you're interested in, or somehow it's important, you're going to be more likely to remember it than the other person. That's the one thing. The other thing is, I at one point in my life, I was very nervous or uncomfortable with the idea of speaking out. And I was wondering why. And I don't remember exactly now the circumstances, but I think it came to me in a dream, or dream format, that in a previous life I had had a spear thrust into my throat by the someone who represented the authority of the time, and my understanding was that it was an attempt to shut me up, and so that carried over into my current life. That was my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can't say that it was an actual remembering, but I think that oftentimes communication comes to us through dreams.
Oh, me too.
I don't doubt that it was an accurate explanation of why it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In this particular circle, I mean, not just the people in this meeting tonight, but in a kind of my spiritual circle in general over the years, a number of people that I know have been very, very reluctant to speak out in public about spiritual things because they either have specific past life memories of that ended up really bad, or they just kind of have a vague feeling of this is not a safe thing to do. It's not a safe thing to do. And I absolutely agree with you. I think those things really, especially something that traumatic and intense, carries over, into another embodiment, and we're very reluctant. We're very careful about those things uh, that caused us something disastrous in another time. The last thing I wanted to mention about memory, just as a
You wanted to say something?
okay, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Um, I certainly understand and really feel that what you have said about, whenever, even with this group, when I say something like I did last week about the Golden Bowl, things like that, it really, I don't understand what it does to me and why, but that's something I really repress a great deal. And there are very few people I will share those things with. But getting back to the awareness and precognition has been a profound thing in my life. My best examples were before I went to college, the summer before. I was really, really, really looking forward to getting there. Partly because I was going to be getting away from a dysfunctional family situation and being liberated. I had a whole lot of my energy was out there.
Yeah.
It was being at that college and stuff, even though I'd hardly set foot on that campus. And I would have a dream, and I even remember telling my mother, "Oh, I had another dream about being in college last night." And that freshman year, I had such a series of deja vus in such detail as to, gee, I'm laying on the floor. I'm talking to a roommate who I didn't know was going to be my roommate, and even the books on the shelves, all the details. And what this is what I dreamt last summer. And it was because it was such a series of them, and I could recall where they had come from. it's just a real demonstration about the flexibility of time.
Hmm.
And, hey, and we know that there are levels that are beyond space and time.
Yeah.
So not that mysterious in a way if if you're to think that you just got to that level and
Hmm.
time was no longer relevant.
Right. Right. Yeah. Those are good examples. Those are good examples. Thank you. So what time we got? Oh gosh, it's already this went by really quickly for me tonight. Thank you all for participating, those who spoke and those who didn't. Um, so the last piece, I'll just leave it at this, just because with the memory thing, I think it's significant. Um, Probably all of you, or at least I think some of you, have had the experience of meeting somebody for the first time, and it's like reconnecting with an old friend. There's this soul memory of having known one another, been close to one another before in whatever form the relationship was. It was very meaningful and very close. And when you come across that person now in this embodiment, you may or may not have a lot in common at a personality level right now, but you have this kind of instantaneous bond of sort of recognition and this connection that you feel with one another. And I think that's a function of this soul memory also, that many people I know have had that over the course of their lives with different people. So, all right, I'm going to just draw it to a close because it's at that time, but thank you.
Before you end,
Yeah,
I would
Abby,
like
go
to
ahead.
say,
Mhm.
speaking of memories, if you are on the One by One Facebook page, and if you aren't, let me know and I'll be glad to send you an invitation, or you can send us one to you. I'm putting up pictures of for the last 30 years over our different people in our spiritual community. So, and you're free to just like click on that and drag it over to your desktop or however you do it on your phone or tablet. And you can have those pictures for your very own. So just be watching and there'll be more coming. I did post some today and I've got another, I don't know how many, at least another decade of them that I need to pull off.
We
So,
have lots and lots and lots of photos from spiritual programs and events and um, from
parties and
for
gatherings and
30,
all
yeah, for what, 30 years of them roughly.
over 30 years of them. So I'm putting them up on Facebook so you can pull them off. And so I hope you enjoy them. I've got a lot of nice comments from people about them. So feel free to snabble them for your own.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you.
Oh, and we are up to 15 people. We could take 5 more people on the gathering next week.
Could you turn your computer just a little bit so I can see more than your
Sorry,
folder?
sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So if there's anybody else, I really would need to let Emily and Greg know by tomorrow, though. So if you are at all interested in attending the next Saturday's
How many
gathering,
more spots do we have?
5.
5. Good. Cool. Okay.
But yeah, we had a cancellation couple, so we have 5. So just to let you know.
Thank you.
But please, by tomorrow, if you're interested, let me know. Thanks.
James will have to get airfare and to get here in time to do that. So.
I'll be up in June, just so you know.
Oh, that's right. You got to
Yes.
let me know when you're coming.
Okay.
So yeah, because we'd really seriously love to connect with you while you're in the area.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, love you guys. Thank you for another lovely evening for me. I appreciate it. I hope it was good for you too. And let's just take a brief moment just to come back into that silence space again inside. And touch into that place or part in us that transcends all of the boundaries of time and space and all the human frailties, and where we're really connected at a very deep level. And may our relationships with one another help us to remember the reality of that place within us and encourage us to spend more time there because that's really where we draw our strength and our peace from. So may you have a blessed week, and may you be a blessing to someone this week. Thank you all. God bless.